Hey, welcome back into the Electric Lounge, the second installment of the A's, bands, and artists as we move through my entire vinyl collection. Before I get into tonight's band that I'm going to discuss, I want to do a couple updates on videos I've already posted. In particular, AC/DC, a couple things that I wanted to put in that I did not put into the video that I want to throw out to you now. First, this picture, which is just precious, that came from the inside of 74 Jailbreak. This picture, which is an iron-on that I got, which is from the high voltage era AC/DC, that someday I might have the guts to put onto a t-shirt, but you only got one shot, and I love it so much I'd rather just hold it up to the window once in a while and look at it. Third, I had said something about For Those About to Rock being a weak album. What I meant in particular was that it was weak in comparison to Back in Black. The album itself is actually pretty good. Aside from the title track, which I definitely touched upon, my two favorites on the album would be Inject the Venom and Breaking the Rules. And finally, to bring up this album, which is the last of my AC/DC that I had in my collection that I neglected to mention at all. And for me, I know it's kind of a cheesy album, but for me it's kind of special because it was kind of like when I was getting into AC/DC and I was, going into junior high and such and really immersing myself into metal deeper than I had even been at that point. And it's a little cheesy, a little dated at this point, but, Heatseeker's still a great tune. Mean Streak is a good tune. For me, my favorite tune on there, and I don't know why, because it's kind of a strange tune even for them, but Two's Up. I really dig that tune, and the production and the whole album itself is a bit dated, but I really like it. Another update to a previous video would be Van Halen and the fact that I had mentioned that my dog had eaten my For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. Many years ago, which is true, and I couldn't find a copy of it for under like 80 or 90 bucks. And recently I was just kind of scoping around and I found a copy for 12 bucks. So I now have For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge in my vinyl collection once again. And on that album, great album, man, really great album. From the beginning of the drill sounds, going into Pound Cake, which is a killer tune, to Standing on Top of the World, which is a big hit for them. A couple other great tracks intermittently throughout, like Pleasure Dome, the little 316 guitar thing, and honestly, for me, one of my absolute all-time favorite Van Halen songs is on this album, and that would be Right Now. Really well written, it still stands up today, and it's just, they're beautiful words, and the piano part, the minor key piano is just so haunting, and it's a really beautiful thing. So please excuse the update, but this is going to happen from time to time as I iron out all the details of how I'm presenting this project to you, but I'll get it all together eventually, trust me. And it's all in the name of a good time anyways, right? How fun. So, Aerosmith, what do we got? Well, starting out with the first Aerosmith album, which I do not have a cover for. I don't know how I got it or why I didn't have a cover for it, but it's in my Get Your Wings album. That's where I house it. But first album, man, this band coming out of Boston, what a great band. And even now, let's say they're a little more mainstream than I would like them to be at this point, but I'm still cool with that. I mean, that's kind of what happens, right? I mean, there's whatever. They've evolved gracefully, unlike, Metallica. But this album, man, they start out with a song called Make It. What a great way to start out. It's just, look, we're going to make it, and that's just the way it is, and I think that's awesome. So they start out with that one. Other things on this album, obviously you got the great Dream On, which still to this day is one of the classic songs that you'll hear on every classic rock station at least once every 3 hours, which is great. My personal favorite on this album, Mama Kin. Next off, we got the great Get Your Wings album. This album is, this is where they really start coming into their own, you know what I mean? Like, what a great band. Same Old Song and Dance starts it out. We got Lord of Your Thighs, or Lord of the Thighs, sorry. Although he says it the other way in the song. One of my all-time favorite Aerosmith songs. What else? SOS is on here. Seasons of Wither, another phenomenal song, in my personal opinion. After that, the album that got me into Aerosmith in the beginning, there you go, Toys in the Attic. I loved this when I was a little kid. My aunt had it, and I'm talking like 5 years old here. She had it, and it's funny, she's not really even into this kind of music, but she also took me to my first concert without my parents, which I will talk about when I get to that actual band. And the second concert without my parents, but I'll talk to it when I get to that artist as well. So, we've got to save something, right? I remember hearing Sweet Emotion the first time, and I loved it. I would make her play it every time I went to visit her. I called it the Cactus Song. Why? I don't know. In the beginning, the little which I can't remember what it's called. It's not a vibraphone, but you hear it twice, and on the third time, it kind of stops. apparently it broke right while they were recording it, and they decided, it sounds cool enough, let's keep it. So this album's got some great classics on it. I mean, you've got Toys in the Attic, obviously, and then, of course, Sweet Emotion. But you've got Walk This Way, which came back to actually be their savior at one point when they had already been kind of on the outs as far as popularity was concerned. And Run DMC came to him and said, hey, we're going to record this song. You want a part of it? And they were like, hell yeah. And that'll bring us up to where we need to be, but we'll get there. Next up, Rocks. This album is exactly like it says. It just rocks. Starts out with Back in the Saddle, Last Child, God, that's a great tune, Rats in the Cellar, Sick as a Dog, Nobody's Fault, which Testament did a great cover of that somewhere along the way on their New Testament album. This is a great album, man. These three albums, Get Your Wings, Rocks, and Toys in the Attic, are pretty much the definitive Aerosmith albums, right? If you had some go-to, that's where I would go to. Although, the title track on this one, another amazing track, Draw the Line. My other favorite on this particular album would be Kings and Queens, ballad, much like Seasons in the Wither. Just a really cool song, really medieval and dirty and gritty and just like, it's just epic, but not epic in the sense of like, Halloween or something like that. It's just epic in the sense of true, just power, raw power, and I love this album. So, at this point, they're 5 albums in, and they say, what should we do next? Well, let's record a live album. Now, I've already said this about the AC/DC album, but this is one of the greatest live albums ever. You'll hear me say this a bunch of times, I know you will, but I am telling you, in my opinion, if I was to write a list of my top 20 favorite live albums, this would definitely be on that list. This album is just spectacular. So, this is on the Draw the Line tour, and at this point, you've got Joe and Steven Tyler. At this point, they're known as the Toxic Twins because they are out of their mind. I'm sure the whole band was probably out of their mind, but the two of them were doing so much cocaine and so much, probably heroin as well, that they were just gone, man. They were gone. And you could hear it on some of the tracks here where Steven kind of doesn't quite hit where he wants to be, but it doesn't affect the sound quality or the actual amazingness of this record. I mean, you've got everything here. So they start with Back in the Saddle, which is great, a great way to start a show. Sweet Emotion, Lord of the Thighs, Toys in the Attic, Last Child come together. Their great version of the Beatles classic. Walk This Way, Sick as a Dog, Dream On, Chip Away at the Stone, Sight for Sore Eyes, Mama Kin, SOS. So that's the album itself, the show, right? And then on side 4, you've got some of the older stuff that they did, which they do, I Ain't Got You, Train Kept Rollin', and sandwiched in the middle of that is the James Brown tune, Mother Popcorn, which they get a saxophone player up on stage to do a part of, and this is just great. This is, early Aerosmith as well as current Aerosmith on the Draw the Line tour. So after the live album, they regroup, they get back in the studio, and they give us this, Night in the Ruts, which is obviously a play on Kicked in the Nuts, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but, that's probably where it came from. It's a good album. It still is, but you can tell they're starting to lose some of their grip on their passion for what they're doing, you know what I mean? It's a little more going through the motions. Not a bad album by any means, but not as good and substance-filled as the earlier records were. Remember Walking in the Sand, good tune, Reefer Head Woman, Cheesecake is my favorite on here, but it's a good album. And this was the last one that they did with the Aerosmith lineup before they kind of temporarily disbanded. Now, when I say disbanded, I don't mean that they totally broke up. What I mean is, all of a sudden, they're obviously not getting along. The drugs and the alcohol have taken a massive toll upon them as a band as a whole, and they fell apart. Joey Kramer, Brad Hamilton, and Steven Tyler decide they want to go on and record another album, whereas Brad Whitford and Joe Perry were like, nope, we're out. So Joe Perry goes out. I don't remember if Whitford did something on the side. Maybe that's when he did the Whitford St. Holmes. It might be during that time. I'd have to check the dates on that. But Joe Perry started his own little thing called the Joe Perry Project, did 2 albums with them. Decent albums, but we'll get to those later on down the road. But this guy, so this is the only album that features different guitarists. So Rockin' a Hard Place. Here's the other guys. We got Joey Crespo on lead guitar and Rick Duffy on rhythm guitar. So if you ever get a trivia question asking you which album by Aerosmith is the only one to not include all 5 original members, this is it, Rockin' Hard Place. So this album, is there anything great on it? I don't know if there's anything great on it. It is not a bad album, but you can tell it's not Aerosmith, you know what I mean? Again, they're starting to lose their edge at this point, and on Night in the Ruts, and then they get to this, and it's all right, but it's kind of, you know, they're grasping at straws, man. They're trying to hold on for their dear lives into what they have built thus far, their greatness, the catalog that they have behind them at this point. Highlights on this album, I don't even know. I think, honestly, the only highlight for me is that they do a version of Cry Me a River, which I thought was kind of fun. It's not a bad album, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely not as good as their earlier stuff or the stuff afterwards. Now, in the sense of saying that, here's what I'm listening to right now. Done with Mirrors. Now, this is released about 2 years after they did Rockin' a Hard Place, and it's got Joe and Brad back with the band. Again, it's not a bad album. It's still got some good tracks on it, and you can tell that they're still trying to make it a go. You know, they're still trying to keep it together. But the only thing that really stands out on this one, I would say, would be Let the Music Do the Talkin', which is a cover of a song that was on the Joe Perry Project album, which I kind of think that I'm torn between which version is better, honestly, the Joe Perry version or this version. They're both decent, but this album it's good. It's just, again, it's just kind of meh, you know. It's good, it's enjoyable. It's far better than the stuff that they went on to do with the crying and lying and dying and whatever they're doing at that point, Armageddon style. That's where I lost faith in them. I didn't lose faith, I just lost the ability to enjoy what they were doing. I have 2 albums left in my collection, which definitely need to be spoken about, because so they, at this point, 85, they're just like, where do we go from here? And this is when Run DMC comes in and says, hey, we need to record this song. And because of that, because of MTV at the time, all of a sudden, boom, Aerosmith's back on top. So they come out of the gates with Permanent Vacation, which I don't have these sitting next to me, so I'll just put the cover up in front of me like you see it right now. So Permanent Vacation is, for all practical purposes, their comeback album. They come out and, like, the album is where they made their comeback, but they also changed and became the Aerosmith that went on to be probably bigger in the 80s and 90s than they were in the 70s. Hard as that is to believe, because they were huge in the 70s. But when after the Run DMC thing and how big they got, when Permanent Vacation dropped, and all of a sudden you've got Dude Looks Like a Lady and Ragdoll coming out on the radio, people just lost their minds. Then they dropped their ballad, Angel, and that was it. That solidified the fact that Aerosmith was back and they were bigger than ever. And it's a great album. I mean, some of the stuff on there is really fun, and it's a return to their roots on some of it when you're talking about stuff like Hearts Doing Time or St. John. Hangman's Jury is a great track on there. It's a nice balance between old Aerosmith and what they were about to become. I mean, once you get into the Ragdoll, Dude Looks Like a Lady, and Angel, that was exactly where they were going to go from that point forward, and exactly where they went. So after that, I've got this one, and this is where they were now on top of the world again. Absolutely on top of the world. All of the ground that they had laid on Permanent Vacation came to fruition with Pump. Then you've got the hits on here that, again, this is what all of a sudden Aerosmith is bigger than God themselves once again, you know? Love in an Elevator. Pfft. Janie's Got a Gun, man, through the roof. But some other great tunes on this album. Young Lust, great tune. Fine Fine is a great tune. Don't Get Mad, Get Even. Even Voodoo Medicine Man. And then you've got the other ballad, What It Takes. So Aerosmith was back and on top of the world. Going further from this, I don't have anything else on vinyl. In fact, I don't even know if I own it on CD. I don't think I do. You've got Get a Grip after this, which for me is where they go. It's not bad. I don't dislike it per se. It's just not really. It's too much. The crying and crazy and all that stuff. It's a little much for me. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up my Aerosmith collection. on vinyl. Aerosmith went on to become, still the same as they are now. They're a household name. If in my opinion, 70s rule out over the 80s and 90s, but that doesn't mean that they didn't have some good stuff after that. I'll be back soon with my second installment of the A's, and we're going to continue this journey. We got a long way to go, folks, and sit back, get comfortable, and just enjoy your time here in the Electric Lounge. I'm out.